Have you been ever asked this question? What if your greatest suffering was actually the key to unlocking your highest potential? Hi, my name is Evette Rose, and welcome here to today's topic, where we're going to be diving a little bit deeper into trauma, the neuroscience of that as well, and a deeper meaning as well. And the reason why I asked you that question is because I have been asked that question so many times, and there were times where it triggered me. There were times where I could receive it really well. And the reason for that is because we all see trauma through different lenses, right? Most people see trauma as something that breaks us. But what if trauma also rewires your brain for growth? What if the very thing that you've been trying to escape is actually the fuel for your transformation? As most things in life, where something bad happens, that thing it's right there, right? We can't avoid the fact that it's there. But what we can do also in moments like that, and something that I have learned in my life, is to try to see that silver lining around the cloud. And also remember to subscribe here to my channel. And every Wednesday we have free masterclasses. You can go to matmasterclass.com before I forget. Now let's have a look at what is neuroscience revealing, because they do share quite a radical new perspective. And that is that trauma isn't just damage. It's an opportunity as well, but only if you know how to use it. Now it begs the question, are you wasting your pain? Or are you ready to really truly start to harness this untapped power that's hidden inside of your trauma? Let's dive into some of the science of suffering and how you can start to turn trauma into your greatest breakthrough. Because trauma doesn't just hurt you, it actually rewires your brain for change. And when you experience trauma, your brain is actually forced into a radical adaptation mode. So here's what happens neurologically. The amygdala, which is our fear center, it actually grows. And your brain becomes hyper aware of threats, making you actually more intuitive. And the prefrontal cortex, our rational thinking, actually starts to weaken. And you might struggle with logical decisions. But have you noticed in that moment where you feel really challenged to make a decision, it almost forces you to think deeper, beyond one layer, beyond the next, to really get in touch with your feelings. How do I feel about it? How well do I understand the thing that I'm trying to make a decision about? You see, what's happening in that moment is that you're actually gaining deep emotional insight. We also have the hippocampus, right? That's our memory and learning. That part shrinks. So your brain starts to filter out unnecessary details. And did you notice perhaps sometimes in that moment, what it does filter in are things that really truly matter to you? There's another perspective. You see, I have to say, I understand. At first, it sounds like pure damage. I get it. I have been through very traumatic moments myself. I'm not saying this very lightly. But what if this rewiring was actually an advantage? Many trauma survivors, they develop heightened perception, right? The ability to sense deeper into their reality, like that layers of reality. Stronger emotional intelligence, right? Much more increased ability to read people. And there's also a clearer sense of purpose, a detachment from superficial goals. Now, I have a question for you. Are you still seeing your trauma as destruction, or can it actually be the very thing that's shaping you into something greater? Feel free to put in the comments chat box how you feel about that. Because you see, there is a dark secret. Trauma is a gateway to growth. It's not the only gateway. Let's be clear. It's not the only gateway, but it is a gateway to growth. if you, of course, use it correctly. Because if you've been told that trauma breaks you, but here's also what no one really talks about. Trauma is a catalyst for transformation if you face it. And when we, for example, there's two types of stress. We have the post-traumatic stress, PTS, and then we have post-traumatic growth, PTG. So two people can experience the exact same trauma, yet their outcome is wildly different. So post-traumatic stress, PTS, that trauma controls you. You stay stuck in fear. You stay stuck in avoidance and also in emotional pain. And post-traumatic growth, PTG, this is when you really learn and start to integrate the trauma, not reliving it, but integrating it and coming out stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Now, what separates the two? You see, people who have experienced PTS, they suppress and avoid their pain. Where people now who have achieved the PTG, they confront the process and they reframe completely their experience. So you see, your trauma will change you. It will. The only question is, will you use it for growth or will you stay stuck in that cycle of pain? Because instead of asking, why did this happen to me? Try also asking, how can I use this for growth? How can I leverage from this? Because trauma forces an ego death. And that's where true growth begins. Because let me tell you, I've had several ego deaths. And I say several ego deaths because it's not that my ego is that big that it had to be hammered down a few times. We have different types of egos in different types of scenarios, just like we have different types of traumas. And several different types of traumas have definitely come my way. And my ego death has happened in several ways where I needed to learn how to be humble in different areas of my life as well. Because I definitely spent a big chunk of my life living in avoidance, avoiding pain, seeking comfort, and just reinforced my ego. And a lot of people are doing the same. But trauma, what does that do? It shatters the ego. It strips you down to your core. It forces you to question everything that you thought was real. And that is why so many spiritual awakenings, career breakthroughs, and also personal transformation, they happen after a period of extreme suffering. Because you see that your true identity, it dies. Well, at least you thought what was your true identity, because we only know what we know, right? And that is when something new can now start to emerge. Think about it. Have you ever felt completely lost, only to realize later that it was actually the best thing that ever happened to you? I definitely have. Because if you've ever been in a place where you ever felt forced into suffering, only to come out on the other side with a completely new perspective, deeper wisdom, and almost like an unshakable strength, then you will know exactly what I mean. And if you feel you haven't reached that point yet, now you know what to look forward to. Because the power of trauma, if you let it strip away the illusion, it can reveal your true self. And I have a question for you as well. What part of your old self has trauma forced you to release? Put in the comments bar and let us know. I would love to hear from you. The science also of emotional alchemy shows us how to turn pain into real, true power. Because we know now trauma, it rewires your brain. But then the question also is, how do you make sure that it rewires you for growth and not for more pain? There's the catch. There's the double-edged sword right there. So here are 3 neuroscience-backed techniques to really start to turn trauma into personal evolution. Number 1, rewire your brain with meaning. So the brain is wired for storytelling. And when you assign meaning to an event, it literally changes how it's stored in your memory. So instead of seeing your trauma actually as something that happened to you, reframe it as something that is building you. So now ask, what strength have I gained from this? How has this changed my perception in a way that others don't understand? Secondly, train your nervous system to regulate stress, because trauma locks your nervous system into that fight or flight or freeze mode. And to break that, you must teach your body how to relax again. So, what you, for example, can do is train your vagus nerve how to relax, humming, deep breathing, cold water plunges, or even a cold shower. Another one also that's really good is body-based healing, and that can be yoga, tapping, weighted pressure as well. Another one is bilateral processing, like bilateral simulation, which is what I incorporated in meta psychology coaching technique, which is my technique. And another one is walking, drumming, and also perhaps rhythmic tapping as well. And you also will build a new identity. Don't stay the victim, because the brain forms self-concepts based on repeated thoughts. And if you keep identifying as the person who suffered, your brain will reinforce that identity. So now instead, try this. Write now a new version of your story, one where you are the hero, not the victim. Challenge negative beliefs daily. Surround yourself with people who see your growth, not just your past. And a challenge, if you wish to accept it, is you can start seeing yourself not as someone who was hurt, because that person is now healing. So you need to start to reframe that and start moving into, I am starting moving past this. That's a wonderful one that really worked for me. Now, the hidden gift of trauma also expands our capacity for life. Because look, here's the paradox. People who have suffered the most actually often become the wisest, the most compassionate, and the most resilient. Because trauma survivors, they often develop deeper emotional intelligence and much stronger intuition as well, and a greater sense of purpose. And pain also expands your capacity, not just for suffering, but for joy, for love, and also fulfillment. Think about it. Would you appreciate peace if you never, ever knew what destruction felt like? Would you recognize real love if you had never felt its absence? Would you be as strong today if life never maybe tested you? You see, pain deepens your experience of life itself. And the only question is, will you let it in? And if this is something that you deeply love, that you're interested in learning more about trauma, then you go grab my book, Trauma Decoded. It's a great book that will get you on your way to learning and understanding so much more about trauma. You can get it at evettebooks.com. Grab your Kindle as well. So, and having said that, remember, final challenge. If your trauma was actually like a training ground for the person that you're becoming, what would it mean for you? How would you start showing up differently in your life? You see, trauma, it really can be our greatest teacher if we let it. And let me tell you, for me, it wasn't just that one-off process like, okay, let it be my teacher. What's next? It wasn't that graceful for me. And I'm sure it probably was not going to be that graceful for you either. But there is a way that we can start to ease into that understanding with all the tips that I've now already shared with you. Because, most people let trauma define them, but those who choose to harness it, they become unstoppable. They turn wounds into wisdom. They use pain as rocket fuel for personal evolution. So I ask you one last time, are you wasting your pain, or are you ready to turn it into power. Drop a comment below and let us know, how has trauma ever led to unexpected growth? Let's talk. And also remember to subscribe. Stay tuned. I love you guys. And until next time, be the light that you are. And remember, if you want to learn more about stored emotions in the body and how they can even be hiding behind ailments, tension, pain, negative thoughts, beliefs, any challenges that you're having in your body, there's going to be stored messages. So remember to go grab your copy of Metaphysical Anatomy. It's a big book of 722 medical ailments and then the emotions that are suppressed behind them as well. You'll be also finding powerful questions in this book that can really truly help you to get started on your healing journey. And you can find your copy at evettebooks.com.